Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Janae Tibshirani. Banking as we know it is changing. New technology, blockchain, cryptocurrencies are challenging systems we've had in place for years. Some believe banks are being left behind. Maybe this is the case, but banks certainly haven't been idle. They aren't reinventing the wheel, but they are using technology to streamline and enhance what they do. Here to talk to me about blockchain is ANZ's Institutional Head of Transaction Banking, Reuben Tucker. Welcome, Reuben.
Thank you for having me.
Reuben, the thing that's always baffled me is that if you want to move money around the world, pretty much the fastest way to do it is to jump on a plane and physically transport it, which seems kind of crazy. How is ANZ using blockchain to speed up or streamline cross-border transactions?
Sure. If you look at the pain points in that process, a lot of it's based around the procedures we need to go through to get money from an account to another person's account in another jurisdiction. That involves internal process, compliance, and often paper. So the more we can remove those problems using blockchain type technology, the more efficient we can make that process.
Okay, so at which stage of that transfer process is ANZ using that sort of blockchain technology?
So it's worth taking this back to say what's going on in the background here, because the problem here is actually something that's common not only to a cross-border payment, but a lot of financial services and indeed a lot of the problems that face the world in terms of moving information or value from one point to another. Think of the world as being, or civilization itself, being based on a series of ledgers. You provide me with a good and I pay you some form of value for that, and we keep a ledger of that activity. That ledger is often centralised in one place, and that puts a lot of risk on a single point. It could be a data centre, it could be a single computer. And there needs to be a level of faith between the two of us that transaction is going to move ahead. So a lot of the process is around satisfying those three elements. Blockchain is a fantastic way of bringing all that together in a very effective, very quick means that is safe and secure.
Okay, all right. So, instead of the cross-border payment system has been there as it sort of in its current form for years. At which points can we make it a bit faster without sort of introducing a whole new system?
Yeah, and this is where the real advantages start to kick in. So a lot of it's around the simple process of saying, right, I want to pay money from an account in New Zealand to an account in the US, and I want to do that instantaneously. What's stopping that today? Generally, when we make a payment, we're not just making your payment, we're making thousands of payments in very large batches. And then the complexity involved is the bank at the other end working out which part of that bulk payment is related to the underlying cash flow that is part of your transaction, and how do we get that to the account you want it to go to. So the quicker two banks can talk across borders to work out where it's coming from and to, the better. Blockchain's great at doing that. It's a single source of truth between two parties, and ultimately any party that wants to be part of that transaction. The other complexity involved in moving money across borders is often it's not just two banks. It could be dozens of banks involved in the movement of funds between two points, and so that trusted central source of truth needs to exist. And this is where the concept within blockchain of a decentralized ledger, public access to information becomes very important.
Okay. The thing that interests me in this is that there are so many banks and fintechs and everyone working on various types, blockchain initiatives, but they aren't really that useful unless everyone gets on board the same initiative. So Absolutely. What is ANZ doing to sort of collaborate with other banks and fintechs, I guess, perhaps to try and come to some decision that, yes, we're going to use this system to do this particular function?
Yeah, correct. And look, you've hit on a key point there, which is there are a lot of blockchain alternatives out there today looking for a problem. Right? We should be looking at the other way around. What are some of the world's real problems? What are some of the real problems facing the financial services industry in terms of improving customer experience, and how can we apply blockchain to it? But not every problem will necessarily be a blockchain solution.
Sure.
So what are the problems that really work well? And they're generally these ones with the core central common source of truth issue that's at the centre of the problem. On this point around buy-in, none of these solutions work unless you get true industry adoption, and that's been a key development, I think, in the way that the industry is approaching a lot of our problems using blockchain. A lot of the experiments we've run as an organisation have initially started with two partners. So we've tested a concept between 2 points with 2 organisations. We've got that working, but ultimately the value or the IP that we've developed in that test, that experiment, is only of any use to us or ultimately our customers if we can open it up to the entire industry.
Sure.
So a lot of what we've done is actually involve building the technology, but then also getting the involvement of other institutions and even whole industries.
I understand in the cross-border payments section, ANZ has, is it 33 banks on board using this one blockchain technology that ANZ has initiated? Is that right?
So just around 18 months, 2 years ago, we initiated an experiment with ourselves and a US bank, Wells Fargo, in just taking a very simple part of that problem in moving money across border, which is how do we make that reconciliation of all those, could be thousands of payments embedded within a bulk transfer of value. And blockchain was a great solution to that. Sure. We managed to get it to work between 2 points very effectively. And we then said, right, how do we now expand this? And how do we make this of value in terms of our own customer experience? Pointless if it's just the two of us that can use it.
Exactly.
Because then it's only going to be customers of those 2 banks that benefit from the experience, or you must have an account with the 2 banks to be able to really leverage that value. So we've taken it out to the industry, and we took this particular experiment to SWIFT, it's a global industry body for payments, and said, right, we want now to effectively gift this to the industry and have it broadly adopted so that we can use it with many counterparties. We started with around half a dozen, moved to 20, and we've now got 33 banks globally with an initiative testing this technology, and it will become part of SWIFT's global payments initiative that is being rolled out as we speak. So
it's still in the testing phase?
Still very much being tested, but with a larger group of counterparts, and therefore its value is being enhanced.
Okay. Look, a company that's probably one of the most talked about companies in the world at the moment is Ripple. And it is proposing a whole new system, the way I understand it, for cross-border payments. So it sort of wants to do away with SWIFT, and it wants to use a digital currency called XRP, which its value's just sort of shot up. It wants to use that as a liquidity tool in that cross-border payments process. So there are a bunch of banks which are sort of partnering with Ripple and using its technology and using this cryptocurrency that kind of enhances its service. What's your view on that?
Yeah, so we look at Ripple and a number of platforms very closely, and so Ripple is a platform we're very excited about. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in terms of how they could transform that cross-border payments experience. We've got no current projects underway with Ripple, but again, I would, to your question, it's important to separate that value piece, the coin piece, from the underlying technology and the platform that drives it, which is the real value here within Ripple.
Yeah.
That capacity to speed up or make more efficient a cross-border process. So it's separating the real power of the blockchain from what has probably been highlighted in the media around the value piece or the coin itself.
Yeah. So basically, Ripple has this platform, the system in place, and then as a part of that system, there is the use of a digital token or digital currency. The thing that I don't quite get with it is how you can use a digital currency in that transaction process when the value of that currency is fluctuating so dramatically.
Yeah, and look, here it's important in understanding the difference between the coin and the underlying blockchain technology, which we're really interested in, is that you've got a lot of focus at the moment in people's minds around coins as a store of value. That's a completely separate issue. What we're looking at is using this blockchain technology as a means of exchange. So as a means of moving either value or information between 2 or an infinite number of points.
Okay. Look, on to something else. One of the sort of biggest challenges that banks, I believe, are facing at the moment is tough new anti-money laundering legislation. So this means that banks and other financial institutions need to know exactly where money's coming from and who it's going to. So how can blockchain be used in this space to streamline processes?
Absolutely. Look, this is a top priority for us. We're the largest provider of payments to New Zealanders, cross-border, to the New Zealand economy. So we must protect the New Zealand economy and our customers from fraud, financial crime, and flows that could be linked to activities like terrorism. So the application of this technology to that problem is very important. It also coincides that in collecting a lot of this information and ensuring we're complying with these standards, that can slow down the speed at which a payment can move between 2 points. Blockchain, again, single source of truth. common source of truth between multiple parties, trusted and secure, it's a great way of moving that information that we all need. So if you take that example of, again, two counterparties, and this is one of the experiments we're running at the moment with JP Morgan, the US-based bank, with the Royal Bank of Canada, where we're working on a series of tests on how we can exchange the information we know about our customers at two ends of a transaction. Now, if we can verify that JP Morgan are aware of certain details around a customer receiving a payment that one of our customers are paying to, that can satisfy our requirements very quickly. If we can embed that into the blockchain, that transaction can happen at a far faster rate. It's secure, it's fast, and it's trusted. Satisfy our compliance requirements and also make sure that the underlying customer experience is a rapid one.
Okay, so that's kind of like attributing a digital identity to a bank
Correct.
client, right? This is something which governments in the world are sort of grappling with at the moment. And I think some countries are pushing on where people are given kind of digital identities, which might mean that if I need to go use a bank and then go to a lawyer and get a new passport, do all these sorts of things, if I have a digital identity that's stored on the blockchain, I don't need to each time provide all this new information about myself, which would make things a whole lot easier. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of issues associated with that. But do you think this sort of digital identity concept could actually be pushed faster by banks than from governments?
I think it needs to be in collaboration. So it can't be any one player, it can't be any one industry. It needs to be hand in hand with government, with regulators. Genuine, if we're going to get to the end game, the ultimate nirvana would be a single digital proof of identity for any individual on the planet. We're probably some way off, but the path there would involve true collaboration, both within countries and across borders.
Yeah, okay. Look, and finally, blockchain generally can be used to cut out a whole bunch of double handling and paperwork. So what other spaces are ANZ working in?
Yeah, so look, one of the most frustrating processes in banking is the amount of paper we often have to deal with, and that slows down the speed with which we can execute a transaction, and it can often be a frustration for a customer. Blockchain, by its very nature, involves standardisation. So forms need to be simple, well understood, and able to be executed very quickly. So that is allowing us to test a whole series of opportunities where we can introduce blockchain thinking to parts of the business that are paper laden. One part of our business that involves a lot of paper is something really simple around providing a guarantee to a counterparty. And we've developed a blockchain experiment looking at lease guarantees. So you've got three parties to that transaction: a landlord, a tenant, and a bank that sits in between. Usually there would be paper moving in all different directions. What we get is an agreement to a common blockchain format to agree all the terms of that arrangement and a series of rules that would then be embedded into a contract. No paper, complete agreement, everyone knows where it sits, it's unalterable.
Yeah.
Where you've got a lot of paper, it can be subject to amendment or change or even fraud. Here it's embedded into the blockchain. The blockchain allows a level of security that we know we can trust that document cannot be changed over time, and it's a single point of truth for all three parties. We kicked that experiment off last year with Centre, the Australian-based mall owner, owns a lot of the Westfield malls here in Australia, and we're looking to commercialise that technology later this year. That experiment was done in conjunction with another Australian bank, and we're now opening that up to the Australian banking community more broadly.
Right.
Again, because we need that broad industry buy-in.
Okay, so Westpac's the bank.
Correct.
On board with that? Right. Okay, well, Reuben, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing three quite interesting initiatives with us. I guess the thing we look forward to seeing now is how they transition from that trial phase into the market, and then the challenge being to get a wider range of banks to all agree on using the same scheme and the same technology. That would be the challenge, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and this is one of the great aspects of this technology as it evolves, is it's open. It's distributed, it's very public, and to get real outcomes, we need collaboration. So it's changing the way we think about developing this sort of IP. It needs to be open, it needs to be shared.
Sure. Reuben Tucker, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm Janae Tibbs-Shirani from interest.co.nz.